from our opinion or our perspective as practitioners, this has been one of the most successful things that was done in 2019 when you look at how much credit was availed in a 6 month period. I think consumer credit has grown very well. The corporates who've always had credit have also been availed even more credit, and that for any economy to grow, the SMEs and the retail segment must be availed of credit. And I think the LDR is doing that very well. And I think most banks are probably close to 60%. But just as the director said, it means we'll push and try and get ourselves the remainder of the 5%, maybe between now and the end of the first quarter, maybe at the worst half year.
Now, you just listened to the Managing Director of Guarantee Trust Bank, Mr. Segun Agbaji, talking about the success of the loan-to-deposit ratio policy of commercial banks following its increase by the CRR or by the CBN from 60 to 65% in 2019. Well, let's now move to the streets of London for updates on latest developments there. And Juliana Olayinka joins me now. Good morning, Juliana. About 1,400 homes and businesses are reported to have been affected by the floods in the wake of downpours brought by Storm Dennis. And there, of course, has been a heavier rain forecast. What is being done to avoid further damage from the storm?
Good morning, Bissy. Well, if you are in one of those devastated regions, you would be saying this morning that not enough is being done. A lot of people are asking where exactly Prime Minister Boris Johnson is, because yet to visit those regions. And in the wake of Storm Dennis, these are the worst floods that Britain have seen in almost 200 years. 4 people have already lost their lives, and severe weather, including snow, is still forecast in particular areas. I think the main regions that are being battered at the moment are South Yorkshire, Wales, Shropshire, Herefordshire. Thousands of people are being asked to evacuate their homes. There are severe flood warnings, over 300 flood warnings, and some of the most severe, almost 10 of them, are saying that people could potentially lose their lives. Now, the Environment Agency is saying that at the moment there are about 3 miles of makeshift dams that they've put in place, as well as 90 state-of-the-art pumps to try and get some of this water away from the most severe places that have been flooded. And also as well, there are about 1,000 workers that are literally working around the clock, just trying to get some of this water out. But it's raised a lot of questions. Before, these floods were something that you would only see in Britain, once a decade, once every few years. But this is now becoming an annual issue. And as I said, more devastating weather is still yet to come.
All right, under post-Brexit immigration plans unveiled by the government, they are saying that no visas for low-skilled workers. This is, of course, already raising some controversy. What are you hearing from the streets?
Well, this is the biggest shake-up to Britain's border immigration policy in almost 50 years. It's definitely an immigration policy of a generation that will affect many people, not just those coming from the EU, but definitely even those coming from Nigeria. There will now be a points-based system in the UK. Migrate here, there are certain conditions that you will have to meet. I think the most severe one, which is causing the most controversy on social media at least, is just about how much money you will need to be earning. That bar has been raised to just over £25,000 a year. I think that's an equivalent to about 11 million naira. And people are saying that this is absolutely ridiculous. It's already caused backlash since Priti Patel, the Home Secretary, announced these moves very early this morning. A lot of business owners are worried that this is severely going to affect agriculture, nursing, some industries that Britain really rely on. To be honest, low skilled, low paid workers. But that's exactly what Boris Johnson's government is trying to wean Britain off. We had the Labour results yesterday, and even though there are a lot of people in record high employment in Britain, there are still well over over 1 million people out of work. And the government believe that following the result of the 2016 referendum and the historic victory for Boris Johnson's Conservative government in December, that British people want British jobs for British workers. And one of the ways of doing this is to adhere to these tough immigration rules.
All right, Juliana, now some groups have called for Chancellor Rishi Sunak to save banknotes and coins, saying that without urgent new laws, the cash system could collapse within a decade. And they also want him to take action in his first budget on March the 11th. Does that mean that they don't want the cashless system? What exactly are they saying?
Well, what they're saying is they want to protect the vulnerable and the elderly and those who live in rural communities. You know, even where I am in central London, there are some shops that won't take cash. They're cashless. People enjoy cashless. Even in the UK on the underground, you can use your mobile phone to get on the train. And it's becoming really popular. I believe they say at least only 1 in 10 transactions in the UK at the moment are done with cash. And that's great if you're a young millennial or somebody who's into all of this technology. But if you're not and you're elderly and you live pretty far away from a lot of these big glossy buildings, then it can be a struggle. So some of these groups are urging the British government, Rishi Sunak in particular, to really focus on cash in his March the 11th budget, because they feel that without this legislation, then there can be some serious issues. So cashless is great, but it can cause some issues for others.
The European Union has added the Cayman Islands, which is a UK overseas territory, to its tax havens blacklist. The Cayman Islands is the first UK territory to be added to the EU blacklist. What responses are you getting on this?
Well, I haven't heard any responses at the moment, but it's a pretty serious decision, and it shows that the EU are not going to be mincing when it comes to negotiations with Britain. As you said, this is the first British overseas territory to have this ban, and I suppose since the Panama Papers scandal of 2017, where so many big figures, including Nigerian heads of state, former heads of state, were placed in this allocation of funds, the EU have had to be pretty strict and adhere to some rules. And now that Britain have decided that they'll be out of the bloc, they're going to be hitting hard on them. The finance ministers of the remaining EU 27 had a meeting on Tuesday, and from that meeting, they believe that some of the billions of investment that's going into the territory just doesn't have any economic activity to back it. So they've put out a pretty serious warning. It's not just this area. There are other places that have been put on the EU's blacklist and watch list. And it's pretty serious, because what that means is you have a downgrade in your credit rating, your financial ins and outs will be completely scrutinized, and also the funds and any funds that are coming from the EU will be completely limited. It'd be interesting to see just exactly what the response will be from the British government.
Absolutely, we'll wait to see what the response will be. But meantime, could you tell us what the early numbers are looking like on the street? Can you just give us a sneak peek into what the figures are looking like this morning?
Well, you've caught me off guard there, Bissy, because I haven't had a sneak peek into early trading at the moment. But of course, COVID-19 will still dominate the sentiment on the equities and currencies market. We also know that we're expecting some of the big corporate banks to be giving their trading updates. HSBC, the furore over their slash cuts of their 35,000 jobs still goes on. And there are questions as to whether or not HSBC can still survive this. There is so much stiff competition from internet banks and digital banking at the moment, and the issues with Asia. So there are a lot of questions about these big banks and whether traditional ways of taking out your money will survive in Britain.
All right, Juliana, I'm sure you have more on these numbers when you speak with Chimezi on Business Incorporated later today at 1:30. But thanks, and see you again then.
Thank you, Bessie.
And that's our show this morning. Thank you for watching. I am Bisi Adebayo.